Hello? Everyone, I'm like 30 seconds early. Can you guys hear me? I don't know. Let's see if we're here. Yeah, don't forget to plug in my mic. I know. Last time I started a stream, I did not have my mic set up. So this time I do. Hi everyone. Oh, everyone can hear me. This is good. This is good. Hello. Gosh, there's a lot of people here already. How cool. Wow. Oh my gosh, we're $16 away from our next stretch goal. Is that right? Maybe we'll cross it during this stream. That would be really exciting. We're getting an original soundtrack for Shadowdark, which I'm so excited about because in my opinion, music is very important for ambiance, and Shadowdark could really use some music. So that would be really exciting. Hi everyone. Oh my gosh, it's crazy to be here again with everybody. We've got folks from Iowa, London, Poland, Malaysia. Did we just hit 1.8? Wow, thanks everybody. Wow, it's crazy. We tend to have good luck at hitting stretch goals and stuff like during events and streams, which is really cool. So then we can all celebrate it together. So that's really awesome. Thanks you all. Oh, we've got Milwaukee represent. I know it well. Rhode Island, the UK, Berlin, Portugal. Geez, this is so cool. Everyone from around the world. I hope the timing on these live streams being on the weekend is relatively okay for everybody. So, let me know. But I try to place it at a time of day that most people could tune in without it being either too early or too late. And so here we are. So you all, I don't know if you can hear it in my voice. I'm still a little under the weather. I had a video I wanted to put out yesterday about West March's style gameplay, but when I went to record it, I tried a couple times and I just sounded like death. And so I was like, I'm going to wait till I'm completely recovered, rest my voice for our stream today. And so that video is pending. I'm planning to get that out on Wednesday of this coming week. So thanks everybody for being gracious with my little con crud situation. Yeah, wow. Oh my gosh, so many people. Canada, Oregon, Idaho, Switzerland, Brazil. This is awesome. Yeah, hydrate. I'm gonna hydrate you all. I've got some water. I say it's not a good con unless I blew out my vocal cords. So, honey and tea. Yep. Baron DeRop introduced me to the idea of a hot toddy, the drink that is very magical for fighting back against illness. He made sure I drank one before I left the convention at the end of the con, and it did help. So, okay. Is anyone waiting until the backdrop goes from a house to a mansion? No, this is it. This is the lair. Oh, from Verona, Wisconsin. That is a place I know well. I spent a lot of my childhood there. All right, you all. So I won't go on for too long with intros because otherwise I could just keep marveling over everybody from everywhere this whole time. From Spain, bienvenidos. Who else? Okay. Well, today we are talking about the design of the Paladin class for Shadowdark RPG as a part of the Western Reaches Kickstarter, and I know that the four class options that we put up for vote, it was really hard to distill down to 4 because we got so many great ideas from everybody about really cool stuff to possibly include. And I really had a hard time picking what to put on there, but it ended up kind of winnowing down to what I thought would fit the Western Reaches setting, what we might be able to lean into, knowing that we're presenting a world that's it has options for hex crawling and open sandbox gameplay. And I don't know if anyone is surprised that Paladin won. It was very popular. It was highly requested. Barbarian almost won. And so I appreciate the design challenge because, as people have noted in the chat, this is going to be an interesting effort in deconflicting the Paladin from the priest and from the fighter in particular. And I think we can do it. I have all confidence that we can do it. So we're gonna go for it. Let me see. I actually Barbarian got snubbed, poor thing. It only lost by like 3%. I think my dog's joining us. Hi, Matilda. She always likes to check in on the live stream. She likes to make cameos, so you might see a little tail going underneath me. If you hear audible sighing or anything, it is Matilda, not me. She likes to wait till I'm on an important streamer call, and then she lays under my desk and like huffs and puffs and sighs. And I've had people be like, "Did you just sigh at me?" And I'm like, "No, it's my dog." So here we go. I'm gonna switch us over to a design page, so hopefully you all can see this. We've got a little layout here for the Paladin class, and if you have caught prior design live streams I've done, I think you all might know that I like to design directly into the layout, especially for something like a class, because space restrictions inform the design in some way. You know, space restrictions always end up mattering in some way when you're doing design and layout, but I really like keeping classes limited to a 1 or 2 page spread that still gives us space to incorporate art as well. And it's sort of a built-in boundary that helps you keep focused on the few things that matter. So what we are going to talk about today, first of all, are influences for the Paladin. Of course, I am going to try to bring some influences to our design here that keeps respect to maybe some of the history of the design of the Paladin, but also I don't know if we want to do a totally conventional Paladin. And I think I want to start off by listing some of our inspiring, pieces of fiction, which when I'm designing a class, I really like to look into the fiction and historical or legendary elements that might inform what we were going to do. So for example, if Barbarian had one, I was probably going to model a Barbarian on more of a Conan the Barbarian rather than a Berserker, since sword and sorcery fiction is such a strong component of Shadowdark and old school gaming at large. And so this Paladin will be a little different than what you might have been expecting. First of all, it won't be a spellcaster because we're designing a purely martial class here. And that means that we're not going to follow the precedent of prior classes like the Knight of St. Yidris, which is a warrior knight that has some access to witch spellcasting. I really believe that we saw this in the real world as well, but there were different orders of knights all throughout history that had different goals, purposes, inspirations, leadership. They existed in different parts of the world. They had differing purposes. And I think that not all knights need to fit a cookie cutter implementation of like a armored spell casting type, So in the Western Reaches, there's going to be also a green knight. And so here I would say, let's begin by citing, as I saw in the chat here from Tim, Arthurian myth. Everybody knows about the Knights of the Round Table, and I think that they are a good and strong influence for the kind of Paladin that we want to design, because in my view, a Paladin is more than a knight. A Paladin is an exemplar knight, and a Paladin is the best of the best as far as knights go when it comes to upholding chivalric code, honorable warfare, and a sort of divine inspiration that transcends the worldly. So we're not just going to be making a knight, we're going to be making a excellent knight, an exemplar style knight here. And so that's one of the big things. And so that right away differentiates a paladin from a priest, because a priest is, I'd say in the core Shadowdark rules, a priest can fill the role of a paladin, and it was intended to. If you're using the core 4 classes, the Paragon classes, a priest is absolutely a paladin. It's even in their titles. But we can take a different angle on how to define a paladin here and give a different presentation. And so what really defines the priest is that it's a spellcaster, and a priest is very focused on the worship of a specific god. It's required in their class choice. Whereas in this case, we're gonna design a paladin around a broader cosmic concept of aligning with law, neutrality, or chaos. So not even necessarily a specific god. And this, interestingly, kind of matches the historic precedent of knights who really came into prominence during the like monotheistic adoption of Christianity in Europe, and like the focus on a sort of monotheistic ideal of goodness rather than maybe the preceding Roman multi-god, multi-interpretation of religious, tenets. So a paladin is basically going to start off by deciding to serve law in this case. I think we're going to be designing a paladin focused on law, and so we'll need to bake that in. And I'm just checking I want to see how our chat's hanging in there so far. So what do you guys think of this interpretation so far, Lances, maces, oaths, yes. So Tim, again, I agree with the need for oaths being an important thing because, there's paladins have kind of acquired a bad rap in the history of Dungeons and Dragons design. They started off in first edition as being both very high level. Like you couldn't become a paladin until you were a high level character, which represented the paladin's supremacy, I think, as a high ranking, very accomplished and revered warrior. So we want to channel that. Now, of course, we're not going to restrict a paladin to like a high level or high stat line character because that doesn't fit with the way Shadowdark works. But I think we can maybe incorporate a nod to that in what we design. And I see a lot of cool people in the chat. Oh my gosh, there's so many cool people. We got Michael and Night Noon. I thought I just saw Harmony Ginger. Lots of familiar faces. Really cool. Ken's here. Awesome. Oh, well, welcome you all. Thanks for joining us. So I was rambling. So you guys had to listen to me ramble, but I want to explain. So when I go to design a class, I do a lot of research first into both fiction and then design precedent, leading back into the history of D&D, because you wanna at least be aware of things. And honestly, I think there are some ways that paladins have become maligned over time. The classic lawful stupid paladin, where they're kind of like himbo grade doofuses, where they are so blindly devoted to doing the right thing that they almost become a problem for the group because they seem not to be able to contextualize the adventuring life against their own chivalric code. I think that's selling paladins quite short. One way we can address this problem is that paladins will probably, as we design them, follow a code of honor. But the code of honor is not like you have to be a goody two-shoes. It's that you need to treat those deserving of honor with it. And that really lines up with past chivalric code, where, even in modern times, the rules of warfare and how to treat enemies and stuff are not completely blind to the nature of the enemy. Chivalric code required that knights treat enemies who were viewed as honorable with honor, and enemies who were not viewed as honorable were not granted that same permission. And so I think that in a lot of cases, a knight or a paladin will want to make decisions based around that precedent, not simply around the I am lawful good precedent. And it also allows some interest to the knight. Like, for example, every knight in King Arthur's court had character flaws in some way. They strove to be the ideal, but really none of them except Sir Galahad succeeded at being the perfect and ideal knight. And I think there's something to be said about the fact that a chivalric code is something to strive for, but I think we need to take into account that the paladin is also human. So, all right, so here we are so far. Now, some of the things I want to talk about that we're going to include here. A paladin is most certainly a martial class. And so we got an easy answer to one of our first design questions here. What is its hit points per level? I see no reason not to make it a D8. You know, a paladin's going to be a warrior. And we're probably going to lean more into that side of the paladin rather than like the spell casting and stuff. So first and foremost, easy peasy, we've got a D8 hit points per level. So I'm going to fill that in right here. And let's talk a little bit about what kind of arms and armament we want for the paladin. This also, I think, goes without saying, but I think a knight can wear all armor and shields. You know, that's how they're depicted. So we're gonna fill that in because that one's easy. Armor and shields. And here's a good question. When we're talking about weapons, this is an interesting one because knights are not always depicted as being masters of all weapons in the way that we imagine a fighter, you know. Hi everyone, and yes, Joan of Arc is interestingly, Joan of Arc is also a huge inspiration. So I'll just make sure I put all of our inspirations out there before we proceed. Roland was sort of an iconic pre-Arthurian knight who was in the court of Charlemagne. A French knight of great legend and history, and then of course Arthur and his round table, and Joan of Arc. And I think Joan of Arc is especially interesting as an influence here because she was actually hardly a combatant, and she was driven entirely by her sort of visionary ability to lead and inspire. And it could even be argued that her greatest strength was her ability to inspire the warriors at the Siege of Orleans, where she was present. It was sort of her debut as a figure in history, and her presence there was so inspiring to the religious and superstitious sort of warriors there that I think she that was one of her biggest contributions to the reason why the French won that battle after they had been losing against the English. And so I've gone on another tangent here because we were talking about weapons, but I want to give respect to Joan of Arc's legacy, and I think we're going to be making or her legend rather, and we want to be making some class abilities that center around the paladin's ability to inspire and lead, you know. So I'm going to touch on that in a second. But lastly, let's talk about what the paladin might have access to from a gear standpoint. Weapons. I think that we probably do want to limit the weapon selection that a paladin has access to because really only a few types of weapons were viewed as, iconic in legend. It was swords and lances. I don't believe I've ever heard of a knight really wielding a ranged weapon to any degree. In fact, probably ranged weapons might have been viewed as dishonorable to the first, the most iconic knights because like the Battle of Agincourt was lost, where a lot of knights were slaughtered by English bowmen, and I think that gave a pretty like sort of dishonorable rap to ranged weapons during the time where knights were at their peak in culture. So, Mono's here. Hello. So what I'm going to say here is, and we can amend this as we go, but I'm going to say all swords. We're going to say lances, which actually we haven't designed yet, so we'll have to remember to do that. And I'll note this down somewhere, but a lance is going to be, in my opinion, a one-handed weapon that can only be used while mounted, that does a D10 damage. So it's a high damage weapon. And speaking of mounted, a very, very important part of a knight and a ennobled knight, a high-ranking knight, a paladin, is their mount. And we can see this in D&D's historical design too. Like summon steed or mount was a big element of what defined a paladin. And we should probably incorporate that. Now, one thing I find really cool about our opportunity here to design the paladin and its place in the Western Reaches is that the Western Reaches is a setting about overland travel, and having a mount is very advantageous in this setting. It greatly increases your ability to travel. It greatly increases your mobility during, open air combat. And there is actually a pair of mounted combatant classes. Originally, we had the Desert Rider from Curse Scroll 2, which I think is the least popular class on Shadowdarklings, which cracks me up. But it is what it is. But it's a mounted combatant. And then a new class in the Western Reaches book is the Kizian Archer, which is a mounted archer from the steppes, the grassy steppes. And so let's talk about maybe giving the paladin a mount. And so I'm going to fill that in here first and foremost, a mount. I think that we need to incorporate in some way access to a mount. Even like Joan of Arc was described often as riding a white horse. I don't know what kind of horse necessarily, a war horse, a battle horse, I don't know. And I think it's a big part of the paladin's vibe. So, no languages. I don't know. So I don't necessarily think being a paladin would entitle someone to extra languages the way that like a wizard would be, So we're gonna consider mounts here. I think that a mount will probably, and I'm actually going to pull up reference to some other classes here on the side in case I want to see how we implemented this in the past. But for a Desert Rider, for instance, a mount actually grows in power with the Desert Rider. And this is sort of a way to keep high level characters from constantly getting their mount one-shotted, which is annoying if they're riding them in battle. So I'm gonna say, okay, so to start off with, here's our plan for a mount. And I'm actually copy and pasting this right now from the Desert Rider, which we will modify. You have a common horse. I'm gonna say you have a war horse with a reliable demeanor, and demeanor is a factor in how easy it is to handle a mount. I think mounted classes have the added benefit of having a well-tempered mount, which is not guaranteed for any other people who acquire a mount. So might the mount step on the Desert Rider's shoes? Perhaps, but we'll have to consider this. The Desert Rider is sort of a swift striker, where they deal additional damage when they charge. I don't think we're going to give that to the Paladin. I think part of the Paladin's benefit is being able to wield a lance on a mount. So we might make a lance a D10 weapon. We might even make it a D12 weapon because it's specifically available only for mounted combat. And I want to make sure that it is useful to use alongside a shield and is worth the effort to use in place of a great sword or a two-handed bastard sword. So we will probably also consider some perks for the mount. It comes when you call and never spooks. That is crucial for a mounted combatant to have access to that, although a warhorse doesn't spook anyway, so that's probably superfluous to say. So we're just going to say it comes when you call. Saving space is always crucial. You can only have one such mount at a time. And then we're going to talk about, too, so there has to be the backstop of if you lose your mount. And in here, if you lose your mount, you can use your downtime to reacquire one. This is sort of standard fare for any mounted class where, it's a given that you might lose your mount in combat and you need to be able to access another one. And your mount, I want to also just give this mount a buff here. So Your mount has additional levels equal to half your level round down. This makes the mount more robust, and it's not going to just get one-shotted every time you fight an ogre. A desert rider can freely leap on or off the mount. We're not giving that to the paladin, so that's one way to differentiate. A desert rider is like a very lightly armored and agile combatant. So, you know, we're trying to constrain some of the coolness that other classes get. A Kizian archer gets bonuses. The mount gets bonuses outside of this. And so I think to keep a paladin sort of a good rider but not exceeding its peers, we're going to give the mount buffs to keep it strong. And getting access to a warhorse has its benefits just to begin with. And I think we'll probably leave it there because unlike the other classes, the paladin gets to wield a lance. So they have some other advantages that the other classes don't have access to. And I do think, you know, this is a good question for the chat. A lance, I'm gonna define in here, but we'll pull it out, you know, because I think we're just gonna put it amongst the weapons later on when I finalize the layout here. So I'm just gonna like kind of snatch a little text box here, and this is probably where art will go in the future. But I just want to see if we can talk about what a lance will have, so that we can clarify this. Hopefully I didn't totally scroll us off the screen here. Hopefully y'all can still see this. So I think that a lance can only be wielded while mounted. It's gonna have close range because there's nothing else that really makes sense. I did design like a double close range on a weapon in Curse Scroll 2. It's fine, but fussy. So I think we're just going to assume that you need to be striking your target at melee range, you know, and, oh, Lurking Fear's in the chat. Hey, you all. It's good to see you. So I think a D12 honestly is a perfectly valid damage die, you know, D12 damage. And I say this because there needs to be a reason to wield a lance out, like that is, you know, everybody would otherwise want to wield a greatsword. And I guess a greatsword is a two-handed weapon. So understandably, if someone wants to have a shield, they wouldn't then wield a greatsword. But then, you know, then a knight's really iconic ability is kind of reduced. And then when we're talking about like a one-handed sword, it needs to be significantly better than a sword. And it's going to take up 3 gear slots because they are incredibly unwieldy and massive. And so that's another counterbalancing. They literally take up as much gear space as full plate. They're extremely unwieldy to transport. And so that's going to be a huge benefit that a paladin gets. However, so far we have only talked about sort of baseline gear type stuff. And next, I think that we really should be talking about some of the more paladin-like things that these guys can do. And I want to pitch some ideas to the chat. You know, I've been thinking about this a little bit. And we've covered mounts and lances, but I think that we have 2 other things we want to incorporate that immediately jump to mind for me. And that is the idea of taking oaths and the possible idea of like a chivalric code being tied into that, but also possibly talking about, like people are saying in the chat, the fact that a knight's sword is also a very special thing to them. And, you know, most famous knights had a named sword. Roland had Durandal, which was a famous sword that had like the hair of a saint in it and like the tooth of a saint, and it was like super blessed and holy. And it was actually such an important weapon that he tried to destroy it rather than let it be captured by his enemies when he was killed in battle. And we had Excalibur, you know, King Arthur's sword. And I think that that's a very important thing for a knight. And I think that a named specific sword is so special to a knight that I want to honor that, but also make it important to protect that specific sword. Like we saw the story of Excalibur, Durandal, the specific sword defined the knight. And, unlike a fighter with weapon mastery where they choose like, I'm awesome at longswords, they could wield any longsword effectively. I think that the named sword thing, the sword, is very, very important for a knight. And so I want to incorporate something to that effect. So we're going to say, and we're just going to call it named sword for now. And here's where we're going to have to be careful about not treading too hard on the fighter, right? Because here's the thing about fighters. They're the best combatants, really, because they have a bonus that goes up outside of their talent rolls at every even level. And this is a bonus to both attack and damage. So fighters are really striker classes in a way. They deal high damage. And I think that we want a paladin to obviously be a strong combatant, but to not go so far as to completely trample on the fighter's utility. So this is my proposed solution to this problem. While wielding your named weapon, you're going to get half of the benefit of weapon mastery, which is that you get to add 1 plus half your level to your attack rolls. This actually does translate into the paladin dealing more damage on average than other melee classes, because hitting is actually what matters for dealing damage. The damage that you roll is going to be within a certain boundary, but hitting is actually the crucial factor here, and a character that hits more often will deal more damage over time, and that's why fighters regularly deal a lot of damage regardless of their damage bonus. So I think that I would like to incorporate something of that nature. So so we'll say at first level you receive a sword with you receive a sword type of your choosing with a name. And here's something too that could be under consideration. So the important thing about these swords was that they were like magical, they were given either by like divine providence, or they were blessed 1,000 mazillion times by all these various saints. And one thing that I have been trying out, which I think is really, really useful and cool, was that, there's a monk class actually that you probably will all see very soon, where I'll share the monk class out soon with you all. But one of the things about it that I thought was really cool was its unarmed strikes become magic weapons that increase in power over time. And I would like to in some way incorporate this idea, because but I have to think about this too, because part of the problem is that increases the damage output, and then I think we're treading too hard on what the fighter can do. So I'm torn between like maybe making it a magic weapon versus giving it some properties of a magic weapon that gets an additional like attack bonus over time. And I think, named sword is we might call it something cooler. Like I just saw in the chat, Blessed Blade, which I actually think is great. Let's call it that, Blessed Blade. That's a really nice sounding Blessed Blade. At first level, you receive a sword type of your choice. This sword must be given a name. Add 1 plus half your level to your attack bonus with it. And then we're going to say minimum 1. Or is it better to say round down? We'll probably want to say round down. Because when you're first level, we'll say round down. I'll double check our wording. I forget exactly how did we word that with the fighter back in the day. It's been some time since I designed the fighter. It's been years. And I think once you settle on a good wording, it's always safe to kind of go back to it. I think, okay, so in addition, add half your level to these rolls. All right, at first level, you receive a sword of your choice. Receive a sword of your sword type of your choice. Receive a mundane. This sword must be given a name. Add 1 plus half your level to your attack bonus with it. Round down. There's a way to word this actually that's a little bit more. I'm just going to snatch the wording from the fighter because, you know, the formula here could be a little confusing. So you gain +1 to attack with it. In addition, add half your level to these rolls, round down. So we're clearly defining the fact that you're rounding down half your level. You're not rounding down the total. So, yes. So I'm trying to decide here. We don't want this sword to be, like, useless against creatures that have, like, magic weapon resistance, and there are some. So treat this weapon as magical against foe. You know, treat this weapon as a magical item. I think that means, you know, it's worth noting that it can punch through things like damage resistance. Yes, a sword to these rolls, to this roll. Yeah, thank you, good call. Add half your level to this roll, round down. Treat the sword as a magic item. I'm not gonna say, you know what, I think I'm gonna, here's the thing. The sword must be given a name. I think that's part of the flavor of the class, but I'm not gonna, there's no game reason to define that, so I'm gonna remove that just for the purpose of focusing in on the game mechanics here. I think that most paladins may choose to name their sword, but we're not gonna require it. There's no mechanical reason to require it. Yes, you receive a sword. So now let's talk about what happens if you lose the sword. If you lose the sword, and good question, does it need to be a sword? I think it does, because there are only named swords that I'm aware of that are things of legend. So, you know, paladins are proficient in swords and lances, and I don't think choosing a lance for this would be appropriate. So it's definitely got to be a sword, but it could be any sword type. You know, it depends on what the paladin wants to choose as their preferred weapon. So I think, as Scott's in the chat. As Scott said, a ritual to replace the blade. There needs to be a way for the paladin to replace this blade, the same as their horse, because you can't just take away a class feature because, like, something tragic happened to them, outside of their control per se. So treat the sword as a magical item. If you lose this blade, you can replace it the next time you gain a level. Well, what if you're 10th level? You can replace it by going on a holy quest. How much do we want to define this by going on a holy quest to find a new one? You know what I'm going to say? Don't treat it as a magic item. It is a +0 magic weapon. We have game rules surrounding +0. It's just, don't treat it as a magic item. It is a magic item. It provides no bonus to attack and damage due to its magic, but it's magic. So that's our better terminology for this. So can it be replaced with a weapon of the same type? You know, my thoughts on this are, you should go questing after a new magic sword if you currently lose one. You can only have one. Oh, we should define this too. You can only have one such blade at a time. Only have one such sword at a time. if you lose this weapon, you can replace it. You can find a new one by going on a holy quest. Maybe it won't be the same type of sword, for all we know. Let them try to find a new one. I think that's cool, because then it kind of like gives them a reason to quest after a different sword type. Okay. So far, we've got a few features that that really kind of help define the Paladin at a high level. One thing that we're missing is the sort of idea of them being like an inspiring leader. Now, all right, I'm going to say the thing that I know is going to make the most people mad in the chat. Buckle up. I do not like lay on hands at all. I think it's a bad thing, specifically because, first of all, it completely treads upon the purpose of a priest. Like, a priest is the person who comes and heals you when you're dying, and if a paladin can just run up and tap someone for 1 hit point, it just so flies in the face of the purpose of a priest. I've never liked lay on hands. I think that it is, I don't want to say gimmicky, but I do actually. I do want to say, you just run up to someone and give them 1 hit point and they stop dying. It's just like, when has that ever happened in the chivalric stories? Like Roland died fighting back to back with his brother at arms, his best friend. They both died. He didn't reach down and be like, come back to life. Here's 1 hit point. Oh, you fell again. Here's another. So I don't like it. I really think it's just completely outside the scope of what a paladin should do. However, I've been thinking on this, and I think that paladins do inspire people to greater martial prowess, to greater resilience and fortitude. And so I think that in some way, we want to reflect this in their abilities. And so my thought is that we give them some kind of inspiring, and this is really looking back to like Joan of Arc. I think we allow paladins to inspire the people around them in a way that makes them more resilient against death. And the way that I was considering this was a bonus that is like, maybe I don't know what we would exactly call this, but I think that we want to call this like some kind of like holy inspiration or inspiring presence. And I have 2 things to pitch to you all in here as I type this in. So allies within near of you add your charisma bonus, if positive, to their death timers. Additionally, any allies within near rise from dying on a roll of 18 to 20 instead of 20. So that's kind of a way for a paladin to have sort of some divine intervention without them just being like, I'm gonna slap some lay on hands you. I think that this is a way for them to aid the priest, in fact, because this gives fallen characters more time to hang on while the priest gets to them. And I don't believe it should be tied to Bob. I hear you, Bob. You're saying wisdom, but charisma is the leadership stat. And so I think that paladins are not necessarily known for being the religious leaders. They're more of the like, I mean, as insofar as what a priest does. I don't think that a paladin is called upon for like theological interpretation. I think they're called upon to lead believers. And so this is what I kind of think might be an interesting take. And this taps a bit into some of the benefits that for example, a pit fighter has. Pit fighters are extremely resilient to dying. And so this does add a lot of resiliency to the nearby allies of this warrior, and I think that this channels some Joan of Arc. And I like, oh, Corbin, I really like your take on the name here. So I want to, inspiring presence to me is a little bit like that sort of falls flat. I think we should call it like, you know, divine courage, or, you know, something more of that nature. Allies within near of you. Rise from dying on a roll of 18 to 20 instead of 20. So I would, Jason's saying I'd rather buff allies before they die. I totally understand. That does fall under the purview of a priest, is to buff allies before they die. I think that the rising on an 18 through a 20 suddenly gives all dying characters a 15% chance of getting back into the fight with 1 hit point. And I think that that really speaks to their inspiring, sort of death-defying presence. So we have all of this. Now, we are getting close to over-designing the Paladin already. You know, the Paladin is already neck and neck in abilities and cool powers alongside the fighter. You know, we've given them 3 really... right, let's call it Righteous Vow. I know Bill here from Crawl Club, he writes a zine called Righteous Vow. It is kind of like that. So here's one thing. One thing we're kind of missing is the idea of like an oath and a code that a paladin needs to follow. I think... I saw something go by about the Blessed Blade. I just want to see. So it should really add to the attack bonus and not damage. I agree. And I think that this kind of keeps the paladin sort of excellent at combat, but not overly good compared to a fighter. Would Divine Courage potentially break the alternative death injury table from CS2? No, honestly, you could still totally give somebody an injury if they were to fall this hard. And so, let me see. Please type of your choice in parentheses or I will combust. Where are you referring to the sword? I didn't read it too clear. Receive a sword type of your choice. You receive a sword type of your choice. In addition, at half your level, you can only have one such sword at a time. If you lose this weapon, you can find a new one by going on a holy quest. I don't see. Does it need to be in parentheses? I don't know if it does. Maybe I'm missing the other spot. Warhorse with it comes when you call. Oh, I might sneeze, y'all. You can use your downtime to acquire and train another. Okay. Any allies within near view rise from dying on a roll. Okay, so we'll definitely edit all of this writing for clarity, but are they, so now is the paladin, good question, going to be alignment locked? And it says Mira asked this in the chat. One thing we're missing here that I think is very, very important for a paladin is making it important for them to follow a code. And what did I skip over? Where did I not put this that I need to put in parentheses? I get very, very distracted by unedited things that need to be edited. It's just like a thing I have. Passive. Okay, at first level, you receive a sword type of your choice. In addition, at half your level, it is a +0 magic weapon. If you can... Are you guys talking about here? I don't think this needs parentheses. Am I correct? Is that what we were talking about? Let me know. It doesn't need them in my opinion. But so a sword, yeah, it doesn't need to be a sword type actually. It could just be a sword of your choice. I think we need to clarify that it's a mundane sword. You know, because someone could be like, it said any sword. I'm going to choose a +3 Holy Avenger. Yes. So let's see. Oaths. This is important. And damage. There's not going to be end damage in Blessed Blade. Oh, you gain +1 to attack with it. I see. Attack with it. There we go. Fixed it. Yeah, it's not going to be damage. Sorry, y'all. Sorry if that was confusing. I forgot to delete that. It's not going to be +1 to attack and damage. It's just +1 to attack. All right. So, Paladins get cool stuff, right? Paladins get cool stuff. And I think that we're going to consider, you know, some kind of oath that they need to follow, some kind of chivalric code, because it's very important to their flavor. And, you know, if they actually break this code, that could be a problem for them. I'm just alphabetizing real quick as we go. So let's just consider like a final entry here called oath. Let's see. An oath. An oath is some kind of code that they need to follow. And I like the idea of sacred oath. That's a great one. Who said that in the chat? Sacred oath, Greedsmith, good call, because I like the feeling we want to convey that this is a sort of holy thing to them. So I think it does need to be tied to alignment. Earlier we talked about the fact that I don't feel that a paladin necessarily needs to swear specific allegiance to a specific deity. I think that they more uphold sort of the overall cosmic ideas of like law. And the reason I say so is because priests are the specific avatars of their deities, whereas a paladin is overall more of a broad agent of cosmic forces. Divine courage, divine grace. Yeah, we can consider this divine grace versus divine courage. You know, that we're trying to convey that they're inspiring in some way. Oath and measure someone every time they act in accordance with their ideals, they get a short buff. So, let me see. So, at first level, you swear an oath to the tenets of law. To uphold the cosmic tenets of law. I don't know if we want to say cosmic, but I think we want to define exactly what this means, because this is where we want to be careful not to tell people that they have to be lawful stupid. That's a huge pitfall for a lot of paladin design and use. So I think we have to you know, this is a challenge, because we have to acknowledge that there might be anti-paladins, right? You know, I've never made a class that didn't have a series of titles or interpretations based on their alignment. And as written, you know, we could have a paladin swearing allegiance or an oath to any one of the you know, cosmic orders, and you know, there's nothing that we've written so far that requires it to be law. And so, you know, do we say that do we give the option of the paladin choosing? You sort of know the tenets of law, neutrality, or chaos. You know, it's funny because I think we're sort of, how we word this will be sort of the difference between whether we're writing a paladin or the potential anti-paladin in here. You know, and it's like, this is maybe a question about future proofing a paladin as well. In my opinion, we've been designing the paladin around the idea of it being law. And I think that like as Corbin just said in the chat, I do think that an anti-paladin is a different class design from the ground up, because we have been framing this class around, you know, the heroic knights of old. And so I want to, I think that it's important that we focus this on to hold the tenets of law. And I want to define this in a way that sort of, you must act, you must always act with honor, humility, and chivalry. You must show those, you must give honor and mercy. I don't want to say honor twice. You must always act with honor, humility, and chivalry. You must give respect, mercy, quarter to those who deserve it, or to those, you know, this is the funny part. There is, yeah, you must always act within, you know, with integrity, humility, and chivalry. That's a good one. You must give honor and mercy to the deserving. And this is a very careful choice in wording here, to the deserving, because this isn't to say that the paladin must play themselves stupidly. You know, when there's a very clear bad person or monstrous creature that's doing something bad, it's a given that they are not necessarily going to fall under the chivalric code of extending, you know, mercy and honor. And I think that that's a way that paladins in the past have gone wrong. I think that design has gone wrong in trying to insist that a paladin must always, you know, give mercy even when undeserved, or treat extraordinarily monstrous foes as being owed some kind of mercy. Like, you know, I'm about to deliver the killing blow to Strahd, and he's like, please forgive me. It's like he's not eligible for it because he is not somebody deserving of honor or mercy. I think this is more like, you need, if you confront another paladin or knight, or if you're going to engage in honorable warfare, you know, the chivalric code in the past actually only applied to nobles. Funnily enough, that, you know, the knights in battle were not required to treat the peasantry with any form of dignity or chivalry, which is kind of funny. I mean, funny, not haha, but like the only other knights and ennobled people were required to be treated with what we would now call like the Geneva Convention levels of treatment. And so this is an interesting thing where we have to make sure we write this in a way that we don't restrict the paladin to playing themselves stupidly. Otherwise, that's not fun. You know, otherwise it's annoying to have a paladin in your group. So I think we're going to probably try to contain the wording to sort of this stricture. And then now we have to talk about what happens if you break your oath. You swear not to uphold the tenets of law. You must always act with integrity, humility, and chivalry. You must give honor and mercy to the deserving. If you do not, if you break this oath, you lose all benefit, you lose all class talents until completing penance. Knights didn't treat other knights with honor or respect. They didn't kill each other because it was more profitable to capture and ransom them. Well, yes, that was a factor. I actually think that it's hard to know which came first, the chicken or the egg. You know, did the idea of ransoming a knight back come out of the fact that it was considered horrible to kill another knight? I don't know. Did knights have this rule in place because they wanted to be treated with dignity, and then ransoming became more important as a part of that whole deal? I don't know enough of the history of it. But yes, absolutely, like ransoming back enemy knights was a very profitable thing in the past. So if you break your oath, you become a fighter of your level until penance. I don't know, because the fighter's really good. I don't think they need that. What happens to your sword when you've broken your oath? It becomes a mundane sword. So essentially all of your class talents sort of like go null. How can we justify not dropping our named blade in later levels for better magical gear? That's a good question. We can consider that, right? Because if you get a really good sword, maybe we'll write in that you can actually, once per level, you can change your chosen weapon. Once per level, you may choose a new weapon to change your to a new weapon. So we'll say you get an opportunity once per level if you found a really sweet magic blade that's like the most holy awesome sword ever. And then we may need to actually change how we define it is a +0 magic weapon. And then we're gonna say you can wait if you lose it. We're already running out of space. We're writing a lot here. We're definitely writing more than I normally do for a class. At first level, you receive a mundane sword of your choice. Gain +1 to attack. Then in addition, add half your level to this roll. Round down. It is a +0 magic weapon. Maybe if I pull this up here, I don't like making such a block of text, but we also need to have room here to explain the Paladin. This is probably unnecessary. Sorry, I'm editing live, you all. This is how editing works. You just cut words until it all fits. Just kidding. That's not it. But you know, finding unneeded words is an art form, and you know, we're always trying to get it right. In addition, it is a +0 magic weapon, unless I'll say unless otherwise noted. So this basically means that you're choosing the superior bonus. So unless otherwise noted, it is a +0 magic weapon. You can only have one. If you lose it, you can find a new one by going on a holy quest. Once per level, you may enact a ritual to change your blessed blade to a new sword. I don't know if we need to say holy quest. I think we can say quest. It's sort of a given that there will be, you know, I think holy quest is superfluous. Okay, so noted, unless otherwise noted, is misspelled. And we might want to say different. Well, I'll just say another sword. A virtuous quest. You know, I think with the Sacred Oath feature, which we're still kind of working on a bit, I think that it kind of goes without saying that the Paladin needs to be undertaking virtuous actions, and so I think that sort of is implied throughout the Paladin's abilities. Let's see, when you roll a talent, and we haven't even talked about talents yet, actually. Save space by making the quest for a new sword the same as to replace it. You may, if you lose it, you can find a new one. Once per level, you may enact a ritual. Maybe we could condense those into the same thing. Maybe. I'll probably mess around with the wording here so that we can sort of carve things into a more fit, a better fit. The thing about mounts entries tend to be really long, and Blessed Blade is quite long too. You gain +1 to attack with it. In addition, it is a +0. You can only have one such sword at a time. If you lose it, you can find a new one by going on a quest. We could just say, yeah, you're right. You can find a new Blessed Blade. You can find or designate by going on a quest. Well, I guess we do have room for the word holy in there. It's not like it doesn't work then. I guess it's, you know, it would have been implied, but we might as well say it if we have room. Blessed Blade should just be Holy Smite. I don't know. I think it's the blade that's important, not the spell in this case. You can never permanently lose this blade. I think you can. I don't know. I feel like you should be able to. You know, Roland stole his Durandal from another creature. I think another knight or something, or maybe a giant. I don't remember. Magic swords get passed around. Okay, so back to Sacred Oath. You swear, and I don't think it needs to be at first level. That's superfluous writing here. You swear an oath to uphold the tenets of law. You must act with integrity, humility, and chivalry. You must give honor and mercy to the deserving. If you break this oath, until completing penance. This is the last thing I want to note in here. Holy quests are always way harder to complete in comparison to the infraction in these things that I read. So like if you accidentally kill an innocent person, the penance is not simply saving an innocent person. That's too easy. Like obviously like on cosmic balance, maybe that is the same act undone, but it's way too easy. Like if you kill an innocent, you have to go on a huge old quest to remedy that. The punishment is 10 times worse than the crime when it comes to regaining lost valor and holy blessing. And so I think that maybe that needs to be called out in some way, especially because I don't want paladins to view this as a transactional, like tit for tat thing where like, oh, I accidentally killed somebody. Well, I'll just go save someone tomorrow and then everything will be fine. Like, no, it needs to be very challenging to undo this. You know, and it is obviously up for some GM interpretation and all of that, but until completing a holy quest of great challenge. And I think that's about all we need to say, but I think we need to convey the fact that this isn't a simple fix. It can be fixed, but it's not simple. And you know, the game master will have to come up with the nature of this. So the rules, so Mano's saying the rules of upholding good, etc., kind of lock down roleplay compared to other classes. Yeah, they do. Like the paladin does have to hold themselves to a certain ethical standard that maybe other classes don't. And this is somewhat reflective of the cool abilities that they get. They get good abilities. I think just out of the gate, they're as good as a fighter. And you know, the benefits that they have extend without effort to the people around them, unlike priests who have access to powerful spellcasting but actually have to succeed at spellcasting checks. Like the idea of the divine courage talent, which maybe will mess with the name, is always on and very beneficial. So I think that Demon 4x4 saying I'd restrict divine courage to lawful creatures. We did restrict it to allies, and I don't believe a paladin would be allied with a bad creature or person. So I feel that the whole oath thing should include that you cannot carouse. That is one thing I was thinking about too. I think it might be understood that a paladin needs to show restraint. So the thing about carousing is that the results are very abstracted. So I don't think it would be, the results given, at least in Shadowdark core rules, are not an attempt in any way to cause characters to break tenets or oaths. Like, so for example, priests that go carousing. If priests anger their gods, they can lose access to their spell casting. But because the results of carousing are somewhat abstracted, the intention there is not that they would be forced by a die roll into breaking their god's tenets. And so I think that would extend to the paladin as well. I do think they can go carousing. There is celebration. Like, paladins do engage in celebration. Like, at the beginning of the Arthurian legend, they're all partying. They're celebrating the victories of King Arthur and the formation of the Round Table. And I think everybody can remember the scene in Monty Python where they're all the knights just partying. They're themselves crazy, like dancing on tables and stuff. Like, I think knights can throw a good party, but in no situation should it be interpreted. Carousing results should be interpreted as a paladin breaking their oath against the character's agency. And I think that that's the precedent with priests, and I think that this would accordingly extend to the paladin as well. That said, paladins can undertake other types of carousing, or I should say downtime. And there are expansions to downtime in Curse Scroll 6 coming. But there's learning, there's training, there's all kinds of other things. And there's some spiritualism focused downtime stuff, which would suit a paladin very well. Oh, Matt Morrow's here. Matt, I'm gonna have to hire you to make some art for this paladin. So I'm glad you're here because you're seeing this happen. All right, so far I think we have actually a pretty solid outline of a paladin that does not necessarily trample upon what a priest can do, or a fighter has their own interesting things. They are quite good at mounted combat. They have interesting divine inspired abilities. They do have a level scaling ability, which is Blessed Blade, which is cool. I think that if we can give classes an ability that scales with their levels, that's always a welcome thing. Now, speaking about leveling up, we need to talk about the talents that a paladin is going to have access to. And so this is maybe not the hardest thing, but it's something that we'll be careful about here. So first off, in our 12 spot, we almost always have choose a talent or +2 points to distribute. Part of Shadowdark's progression is the assumption that stats will be increasing or are likely to increase. Stat increases are a baked in part of Shadowdark's progression, and it's expected to happen once or twice at least for each character on average. Obviously, if not, they're still a useful character, but people shouldn't be starting with like 16s across the board in their stats. Stats are meant to go up over time, unless they are truly that lucky, which I've seen it here and there. The other day, I just rolled for the first time that I can ever remember a 10 for every stat. And I was like, how did this happen? I rolled a 10 for every stat. I rolled an actually perfectly ordinary character, which was kind of funny, but I digress. Okay. So, I'm seeing some thoughts about, I don't like that we can change the blade. I totally understand the thought there. Like, I don't love it either. I wish as far as the history goes, the Blessed Blade was a blade with a name. But I think for the practicality purposes of gameplay, like, this game is centered around characters finding treasure. And so I think that we need to acknowledge that they will find treasure and encourage gameplay centered around questing after even more glorious items and blades. And so I think we have a balance here. Like, I would much rather that a Shadowdark paladin be inspired to go seek out a holy blade that they've learned about, with the understanding that they will get to turn that into their blessed blade. I think it's a very important part of the gameplay loop for Shadowdark. So I don't know that I like it for a talent, but I'd love to see a magic of Scabbard of Avalon. This item automatically stabilizes the character when he goes down. Oh, you know what, Null Zero? That was the Scabbard of Avalon. He did play a role in the design of the Divine Courage talent, in my opinion. Making your allies or yourself more resilient against death. So Divine, we'll just call it divine, instead of divine courage. So I want to say like maybe inspiring courage. I don't know, because like a huge part of this, inspiring courage or something. I like the idea that it's keyed to courage. I think that that's a very important part. But it's also equally important that this is affecting your allies. Can a charisma minimum be a paladin? Well, here's the thing. Charisma is a secondary stat, so for a paladin, so we need to incorporate that into their average level up situation here. So we're gonna say gain +2 to strength, charisma. I think that these seem to be sort of the three stats that tie most into a paladin: strength, constitution, or charisma. Or maybe we say just strength or charisma, or choose +1 to attack with melee weapons, because charisma is a little bit of a sleeper here. I don't know if charisma is super, constitution is super needed for a paladin, but also here's the reason why this is something I debate. When you offer 3 stats for this level up bonus, it's almost guaranteed that a character is not going to have an 18 in all 3 of those stats, that they're going to have something they can upgrade. I mean, it's completely statistically possible that there will be a character that cannot choose an upgrade when they roll this. And so that's why I often will give you can choose to upgrade these stats or take a +1 to melee attacks if you already are maxed out in those stats. So that might be something we do in this case, because Constitution is sort of not that exciting, I think, to a paladin. Like, more hit points is always good, but then again, one thing we didn't incorporate is that historically in D&D design, paladins have been like immune to disease and stuff. And obviously giving them the chance to increase their constitution makes them more resilient against disease. So is that a way that we can sneak in some reference to historical paladin design without going overboard? I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Turn undead is definitely in the purview of priests. I don't want to take that from them. Let's see what other comments we're getting as we mull these things. How does the mount affect gear slots? There are rules for that in any book that uses mounts. So whether it's Curse Scroll 2 or the Player's Guide to the Western Reaches, mounts have additional gear slots in addition to their rider and what their rider carries. So, it's funny, and soon Peterson is saying this, paladins are wise. I actually think most paladins were really not wise at all. Most of them made really dumb mistakes, like Lancelot cheating on King Arthur with his wife, very, very dumb move. Not recognizing their own brothers and killing them in a duel, stuff like that. I don't know if I think that paladins are known so much for their wisdom as they are for their force of personality. And paladins are jocks. I think one could say that's accurate. What if courage can switch from death benefit to resistance? Needs to be a mundane blade. Why would the paladin really quest for an enchanted blade? So Craig, and maybe I need to alter the wording here, but at first level you receive a mundane sword. You can only have one such. You can find or designate a new blessed blade by going on a holy quest. Maybe we should a new blade, a new sword to be your blessed blade. A new sword. So hopefully, and I think hopefully saying unless otherwise noted, it is a +0 magic weapon. Maybe we should say at first level, You can find or designate a new sword to be your blessed blade by going on a holy quest. Do you guys think that that works to convey the fact that it doesn't have to be... it doesn't have to be, like, if you were to go find another sword, it doesn't have to be like a mundane weapon. I just want to... Here's the thing. I want to make sure... Okay, because it is possible to roll low enough starting gold that you literally can't start with a sword. And I think the idea of a paladin being given a special sword as a part of who they are from first level is important, which is why we have this here. Yeah, if not already magical, it is a +0 magic weapon. That might be a better way to frame it. If not already magical, well, we might want to, because I actually think that the way that clause is a little confusing. It is a +0 magic weapon if not already magical. Is that more clear? Yeah, the only thing is I don't want to have like a if clause that doesn't explain. It's just a writing thing. At first level, you receive a mundane sword of your choice. You gain +1 to attack with it. In addition, add half your level to this roll. Round down. It's a +0 magic weapon if not already magical. See below. Nah, I mean, why do we say it's the next paragraph? We don't need to say that. You can only have one such blessed blade at a time. I'm going to just say that just for clarity's sake. You can only have one such blessed blade at a time. You can designate a new sword to be your blessed blade by going on a holy quest. I think it makes sense. We'll tweak with it a little bit. We'll tweak it. So, wow, we have like, do we currently have 900 viewers? That's absolutely bananas. I just saw that in our chat. Wow, everybody, hi. That's a lot of people. A +0 magic weapon isn't mundane. Yeah, so you receive a sword of your choice. I just want, yeah, you're right. So a mundane sword becomes +0. When you wield it, it is a +0 magic weapon. That doesn't sound. You receive a mundane sword of your choice. It is a +0 magic weapon when you wield it. If it is not already you receive a sword of your choice. I want to make sure we say mundane because I can see someone interpreting that as being like, it says I can have anything I want. Yeah. In your hands. That's a good one. If not already magical. In your hands. It is a +0 magic weapon if not already magical. Should we say it becomes? It becomes. I guess that explains that it's going from being mundane to, oh yeah, see, Llama's Ink. We came up with, there we go. See, we came up with it. I think this is okay. In your hands. When you wield it, I should probably use actual game terminology so that I should say when you wield it, it becomes a +0 magic weapon if not already magical. I just don't like having the sword. Cool. Rolling the first Paladin. Yep, definitely. Galahad, the unattainable, most perfect Paladin. Yeah, Wyvern saying it seems the if not already magical seems redundant, but I have it there because later on in this talent we explain that you can change the sword to a different weapon, and I don't want someone thinking that a more powerful magic sword reverts to being +0. So I think what we have here is workable. I think it's workable. All right, now I'm gonna actually try to move Inspiring Courage. We're gonna do some layout stuff, and I want to move this here because we need to be able to include a description here. It comes when you call. So I don't love making blocks of text, but if it means everything can fit, sometimes that's the only choice. This might be one of the longest classes word-wise that we've designed. So what if there's an ability connected to the mount that helps the party hex crawl further? Well, I see what you're saying there, but I think the fact that it is a mount is what allows the farther distance of hex crawling, and I think something like that would fall more into the purview of like a ranger maybe. So okay, let's talk about other talents real quick. So I'm gonna leave this constitution thing in here for now because I think it is a little bit of a nod back to the paladin's holy resilience against illness, that they have a somewhat greater resilience against disease and illness per prior D&D precedent. Okay, so let's see. What have I missed in chat? I'm looking back through removing the mount buff, Inspiring Courage. No, I think the mount's very crude. In my opinion, a mount is extremely important to the historic conception of like a knight, like a holy knight. Ooh, did I not line this up? Oh, that really bothers me when that happens. Let me fix that. Ooh, wow, this is... Guys, this is actually what I do for most of the day, is like squonk like a very tiny line onto another line. There we go. That's the most important thing I do all day. I think that the mount is a cool differentiator for a paladin. And it is hard to deny that horses and mounts were a very crucial part of the mount's image. Okay. So let me see. Talents. What kind of things? So oftentimes we'll have a talent that's in in one of the 3 to 6 or 10 to 11 spot that enhances an already existing class talent in some way. So maybe the 10 to 11 spot might be a good place to put something like this. And maybe we could say like increase Inspiring Courage death range by 2. Like would it be weird to... I don't want to make it like impossible. I was thinking of like doing something along the lines of like increasing the range at which characters can pop up with 1 hit point while they're within near of the paladin. I think that maybe there's a way to do that. Man, Inspiring Courage. If the problem is, how are we going to fit all of this? So increase Inspiring Courage death range by 1 point. Does it make sense? Increase in Inspiring Courage dying roll range by... Wow, I can't spell. Does that make sense, you all? It's actually extremely potent. Increase roll requirement for Inspiring Courage by 1 or 2. Increment, maybe. The charisma buff on 79 already buffs Inspiring Courage. That buffs the bonus on the death timer, but it doesn't buff the death range. 1 point sounds bad. Increase Inspiring Courage dying roll range by 1. I think that kind of works. Yeah, I think that's very potent. That adds, an additional 5% of chance for all nearby characters to It means that in 1 in 5 rolls, a dying character around them will pop up with 1 hit point, which I don't think it's overly powerful. I think that it's kind of interesting in that it sort of is like almost like they're calling wounded and fallen allies back to the fight, and I think it works. So let's call that for now. I think increasing it by 2 points would be vastly powerful. That would give us a 10% increase in this. And like, I'm assuming, we have to assume that they'll roll this. Like, I always assume a worst case scenario that a character will get this twice. Inspiring Courage shouldn't change the death timer. It should do something. Inspiring Courage. Yeah, maybe. We'll see. Expanding the death timer maybe isn't needed. Maybe we just I don't know. Do you guys think we just push it to allies within near of you rise from dying on a roll of 18 to 20 instead of 20? You know? Because really the twofold nature of this ability means that characters are gonna, so let's say that the average death timer is 2 rounds. That's usually about correct. Or we'll say 3. So now the average death timer with the Paladin is going to be on average 4. And that means that they have a 15% chance 4 times in a row of rising from dying anytime the Paladin is within near. That's a huge limiting factor, being within near. Like if the Paladin is like not basically in potential shoulder to shoulder fighting range with people, that's a thing. And so, you know, I think perhaps we remove this charisma-based bonus and keep it just to this range increase, because otherwise it is a little bit potent, to be honest. So what if we do this? So we'll say allies, and we don't need to say any. We just say allies within near of you rise from dying on a roll of 18 to 20 instead of 20. We can make some nice spacing changes as a result of that. Makes it more readable. So then what happens with what happens then with charisma? Do we say, because I think charisma is the key factor here. So maybe we say that that all allies like pop-up range is increased by whatever the Paladin's charisma bonus is. 18 to 20 to stabilize instead of a natural 20. Yeah, that's where we are with it right now. And I think charisma is important. I wonder if there's a way for us to word this, like rise from dying. Yeah, because I think we need to factor in the charisma stat here. Let's see. Allies within near of you rise from dying on a roll. 18 to 20 instead of 20. All right, I'm just gonna like space this out. It's gonna look weird for a second to see if we can maybe tinker with this. So allies within near of you add your Ka bonus if positive to the range. It's like, because it's funny because like the pop up from dying thing doesn't actually have a defined game term. So, and Jay is saying, doesn't giving the party rising at 18 to 20 kind of give the entire party one of the pit fighter abilities? Yes, only if they're within near of the Paladin though. So I think that's a fair limiting factor there. So, yeah. Oh, this is an interesting thing. They rise from dying with HP equal to the charisma bonus of the Paladin. That could be interesting. To hit points from characters who rise from dying. Ooh, you guys, that's all some great ideas. I think that's something we could try. So we'll say, if they rise from dying with, oops, I'm gonna have to push all this back to how it was. That's okay. They rise from dying with addition HP. Wow, I can't spell. Equal to your Ka bonus if positive. unfortunate, but we do have to define the if positive element. That's kind of cool. Roll to pop with like up to 4 additional hit points. I don't think that's overpowered. It still keeps them within like sometimes 1 hit of going down, but it's actually a nice little buffer. Oh, hi Yuri. Yuri's in the chat. What's up, Yuri? Yuri's a very fantastic artist who has also contributed a lot. Hey, Black Lodge. Wow, everyone's here. Rise from dying is the wrong angle. Make it so it helps prevent death. Well, maybe. I think a priest does a lot of helping prevent death by being a buff class. I kind of like it. I think it's cinematic and cool. You know? Yeah, 'tis but a flesh wound, says Thacko. Exactly. Yeah, maybe we'll just say minimum 1. That's a good call. Who said that? Minimum 1 credit. Jacob Brown. Good thought. Good thought. And replace it with a comma. Allies within near view rise from dying on a roll of 18 to 20. They gain, yeah, with additional HP equal to your charisma bonus. Allies within near view rise from dying on a roll of 18 to 20 with additional HP equal to your charisma bonus. That works, right? Minimum 1, which means it always goes off, which is cool. I want to add a space here for layout purposes. Oh, I think we can even add one here. Neat. Look how well that fits. I think this is a good implementation. And then our inspiring courage dying roll range increases by 1 point on a roll of 10 to 11, which is cool. How does multiple paladins inspiring courage work? You just use the better bonus, I would say. I think we'll leave that up to the game master to rule, but I would just like use the better bonus in that case. Whichever ability the player chooses to trigger is the one that affects them. So it's like, oh, you have a higher range, but you have a higher charisma, so I'm going to roll on yours for the chance of getting more hit points. Gain Squire. You know, wizard's trying to die to gain HP from the paladin. Well, yeah. Inspiring resilience, maybe. I still like the idea that it's like the fact that the paladin's presence sort of like instills courage and hope. And this again ties back to sort of the Joan of Arc at the Siege of Orleans story. How does a fallen pit fighter in near of a paladin work? It works really well. I think the pit fighter would have to choose which ability they were trying to activate with this roll. They don't get to roll for both. Blunt weapons should be added. Well, I think you could be right. Excuse me, still a little sick. Bear in mind that there are other knight types that are being developed as well, and so for me, the paladin is a classic like Arthurian. I'm working on a green knight, and I think that like blunt weapons for them are particularly on point. So yeah, players cutting themselves down to heal themselves. I think that would be a super strange use case to risk going into dying mode simply to gain up to 4 hit points on the bounce back and then being unconscious during that time and out of action. I don't see it as being a worry. And then, of course, if that was being abused, the game master should just implement enduring wounds. And I don't think that the holy powers would approve of such manipulation. Saving grace suits better. Yeah, I mean, I get it. I get the name there. I do. I'm not saying it's set in stone, but I do want it to tie into sort of the inspiring nature of spurring others on to their greatest fight, as Joan of Arc did. Okay, so let's try to lock in the rest of our paladin talents, and then I think we have a cool approach to a paladin class kind of done here. We've been going, wow, we're going to have done just about 2 hours, which really lands right on the nose too. Will the Green Knight get a talent related to hammers? What do you mean hammer? I've never heard of such a thing. Um, so, okay. The last thing is let's think about the 3 to 6 spot and the 2 spot. So I think the 3 to 6 spot generally is like an increase of like martial ability. So maybe we could say something like gain +1 to attacks and damage with 1 melee weapon. It's a soft version of weapon mastery where they can choose to either focus in on the lance or the sword in question, and it does add a little bit of combat prowess to them that still cannot outstrip that of the fighter. And I do want to give them the option to choose either a sword or a lance, depending on what they focus on. And then the 1 to 2 spot, gain squire. Maybe. I think, that's a good thought. I mean, of course, knights and squires seems to go well together. Speely, I'm not too worried about overstepping on the fighter since they have a baked in progression, whereas this is a rolled progression. It's going to be intermittent at best. And giving paladins a little bit of a damage bonus does seem warranted. I just don't want it to be constant. Bonus to mounted attacks would be unique. This is interesting. Mauricio's saying, what about shielding allies? A good thought. I think that the idea of tanking and shielding allies in a game that doesn't necessarily utilize attacks of opportunity and stuff is more of a positioning problem rather than a game rules mechanical problem. Lay on hands. Never. I had a whole diatribe about lay on hands earlier. And roll on benefit table. Give a talent that gives a bonus when your oath is unbroken? Possibly, but I also don't want to encourage people to break their oath simply to leverage this talent. I'm still stuffy, you guys. So, did I just make a pun with on point? Maybe an unintentional pun, Ken, maybe. Use priest scrolls. Maybe, James, maybe. I am a little bit worried about any overstepping into the realm of the priest. Don't understand what this paladin is doing. We'll see. I do. That's okay. Yeah, okay. Stun cat at creatures. Okay, here's a thought. I think a cool thing, this was almost something I was considering incorporating, was, I wonder if maybe we could give the paladin a one-time ability. So a lot of classes have a one-time ability that turns on when they hit the 2 on the roll. Like, thieves get a bonus, they get advantage on initiative rolls, and desert riders suddenly gain the ability to use any creature as a mount rather than the camels or horses that are ordinarily designated. That kind of thing. So maybe what we do is something along the lines of, I was thinking about this, a paladin, we could say that even creatures that are not normally subject to morale checks must check for morale as normal in the presence of a paladin, like undead, for instance. That could be interesting. The paladin's divine presence is so compelling that even undead actually do fear them. And I think I almost don't want to limit the type of mounts that paladins can have access to, because I do think, I want the GM to rule on whether or not they can, ride a unicorn at some point or something. I think that one thing that was cool about the Desert Rider was specifying, they can ride elephants, but I also think in some ways it might have been viewed as restrictive. Let's try something like this. So, creatures immune to morale check. Creatures are not immune to are not how do we phrase this that fits in a line? That's always a really exciting part. First of all, this is going to be the effect. We say 2 equals reroll, 2 duplicate. Right, because you can only get this benefit once. So, creatures immune to morale. I'll just say no creatures are immune to morale checks within near of you. If we could say within near of you, but then it goes over. What is it? Maybe that kind of creature's not subject to dying roll could be termed stabilization. Perhaps, Lanisar, perhaps. It's even more than that because it's a more of a like rise from dying roll. Lose, yeah. Oh, creatures in near view lose I like that. Creatures in near view lose immunity to morale checks. Oh, I'm still sick, y'all. Sorry. Yeah. Creatures in near. I mean, is it implied? Creatures within near. It's, I think we do have to say of you for some reason, near of you, you know, just because it's, I think we may have to, for some reason, it just seems right. Creatures in near of you lose immunity to morale checks. It makes sense. I've had to, you know, within would sound nicer, but bypass morale immunity for creatures within near seems a bit frightening. Well, Aaron, I agree. It is frightening, but I think that the only creatures that are immune to morale checks are evil creatures or undead so far, and I think it's kind of interesting. Yeah, I think it's cool. So like even horrible undead can be driven away when normally no other character besides a priest could do that. Coffee Mancer, I'd like something more offensive against chaotic creatures. I would argue that this is extraordinarily offensive. It suddenly makes all chaotic and undead creatures subject to encounter end at half hit points. So it's like, let's say you have 4 zombies and they're all down to 10 and they all fail their morale check. You basically just dealt them 40 damage in one go. So let's try it. It's kind of a holy aura. I like it. And I think it'll work. You know, we're going to play test it. I will finish writing some flavor text for the Paladin. And we have 2 abilities from this class that make it harder for the GM to challenge the group. Absolutely. Absolutely. But isn't that in some way the true for all class talents? I mean, they're making the characters more resilient against certain game states, you know? And so how does Inspiring Courage work if a paladin is dying? What do you guys think? What do you guys think to that question? How will it work if the paladin is dying as worded? Allies within near of you. I don't think it would affect the paladin. And I don't know if it should. Do we need to change the wording? Should it affect the paladin? I don't know. I think if it affects the paladin, then it really steps on the pit fighter. I think that Inspiring Courage is meant to aid your allies, you know? The paladin's a bit overpowered. Everybody's overpowered in some way. I don't think that the paladin outbeats the fighter in damage output. It certainly doesn't outbeat the priest in battlefield control, aka healing, or, you know, turn undead is extremely powerful. I think that their ability to use a good damage weapon in mounted combat is good, but not overpowered, because it's comparable to other mounted classes and also comparable to the greatsword. So I think I'm happy with them. I think that they are they fit in to a slot between the fighter and the priest, and I like the nobility and idealism sort of enshrined in this paladin that pays homage to past paladin builds, and it'll be interesting. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see this in playtesting. So I don't know, you guys. Do you think we kind of did it? Do you think we did a good effort at towing the line between priest and fighter? I know a lot of people were worried about that. Like, is this a distinct class with interesting abilities? I sort of think so. I think it'll be really interesting to see these implemented. And what's better about the lance than the greatsword? Not much. They're one-handed weapons. Merethiff, they're one-handed weapons. And I will note that. So you can actually still bear a shield while you are wielding a lance. So that is their benefit. Cool. Well, you all, we clocked in just under 2 hours. I am excited to see what our spellcaster class turns out to be, which we will announce in probably like slightly less than a week, because we're going to do that live stream design next Sunday at the same time. I've never done a spellcaster design live on the air, and it's going to be very focused on spell design. And so that'll be interesting and challenging. We'll see how we do. Awesome. You all, thank you again so much. We'll wrap it up. Go have a nice lunch or dinner, and I will publish the PDF of this onto the Kickstarter, also in Discord and various other places, so you can download it and take it for test spin. And let me know your feedback on how it plays, and we will make any needed tweaks before we send this to press in a few months. And that's all we've got for now, guys. Thanks again. Talk to y'all later.